we've got the preeminent political mind in America, and so Mike and I are going to try and stay out of his way and ask him good questions. And my first question, Karl, is about a very serious, a terrible subject actually, the slaughter of 4 Americans in Benghazi. And as we learn more about this, my emails, phone calls are mounting and the anger is mounting. I'd like to know, A, what you think may have happened here in terms of the breakdown inside of White House communications, if there was one, and then 2, what do electorates do and what does this electorate do generally and specifically about this massacre of 4 Americans?
Yeah. Well, first of all, let's talk about the substance of the issue before we get into the politics. The substance of the issue is the White House has mishandled this from the get-go, and the State Department mishandled it. And for the sake of our country, we need to have a sober, nonpartisan, hopefully bipartisan investigation by Congress. We had 200 security incidents in Libya. We had at least 12 requests by American security personnel inside Libya for enhancements to the embassy. All of them rejected. This consulate, not an embassy, but this consulate in Benghazi has the lowest standard of security in the State Department parlance. You know what they call it colloquially? They've got official names for these levels of security. You know what they sort of refer to the bottom level as? Lock and key, because that's the security, a lock and a key. Turned out, I didn't think they had a safe room. It turned out they had a safe room, but it didn't have fire suppression or, smoke ventilation. I mean, it was basically go in there, be attacked, and, all somebody had to do was put the place on fire and you'd roast. So why in this very dangerous part of the world did we have a facility so ill prepared? Why did we have guidance to our embassy personnel for September 11th in Cairo, but not guidance for our personnel at the consulate in Benghazi or the embassy in Yemen, both of which had attacks on that day? Now, I think the president mishandled this from the get-go. We now know that the White House was notified. Deep, disturbing questions. I've been in the White House. I was in the White House for nearly 7 years. I know what would happen if you got that kind of a, 4:05 a.m. The Situation Room gets a report from the State Department saying there's an attack underway on our consulate in Benghazi. I know what would happen. 5 minutes later, the National Security Advisor and the White House Chief of Staff would have been notified by the duty officer in the Situation Room. And I'm confident that happened this time. So what did they do? Who did they call? What kind of decisions were made? What kind of concerns were raised? We know that the attack on the annex was made 7 hours later. Did somebody say, you know what, we better get on top of this thing? And do we have enough forces, either in Libya, the Libyan forces, or U.S. forces nearby? What kind of assets do we have nearby, and how quickly can we get them to the scene? Now, I'll tell you what's most appalling to me. We don't lose ambassadors that often. We have lost 8 in the history of our country. The last time it happened was in 1979 when our ambassador in Afghanistan was killed. This happens on the night of September 11th. On the morning of September 12th, the President of the United States cancels a thing called the PDB, the Presidential Daily Brief, when he gets briefed by the CIA and the intelligence community. He cancels it, goes out and gives a statement in the Rose Garden, and then goes over to the State Department to console the Foreign Service. Now, I get that. That's right. This deeply shook the Foreign Service. This guy, Chris Stevens, was a rising star. And it shook the Foreign Service that one of their own had been so brutally murdered, and 3 State Department contract or employees had been killed as well. But then the guy goes back to the White House, and he doesn't call together the intelligence leadership to get to the bottom of this. He prepares himself to go out to Andrews Air Force Base to get on Air Force One and flies to Las Vegas, Nevada for a fundraiser and a political event. And then that night he comes here to Buckley, lands at Buckley, overnights in Denver, and goes to Golden for a fundraiser, for a political event. What the heck was he doing? On the morning of the 12th, the President of the United States called the President of Libya. And the White House gave out what's called TikTok, a report on what the conversation was. They said the President called the President of Libya, and he said, first item was, thank you for helping return the body of our ambassador. That was good. Second one was, well, we're sorry about the stupid video, but third point is we're a nation of free speech and we can't do much about it. And the fourth one was, we look forward to getting together with you and talking about ways to increase the security at our embassies. Point 1 was right. Point 2, 3, and 4 were a mistake. We do not need to be apologizing and giving them an excuse. We just don't. And we need to treat Libya as a nation with responsibilities. It wasn't, oh, we'll get together with you and plan how you can do better. What the president needed to say was, I'm disappointed. You have international responsibilities. You are a new nation entering onto the world stage, but you have a responsibility to protect the diplomats in your country like we have a responsibility to protect yours and ours. And I want to express our disappointment. But you know what was the worst thing about that call? At the end of it, they said, or excuse me, at the beginning of it, they said, in his first call to the president of Libya. I want you to think about that. 1 year ago this month, Muammar Gaddafi went. He went out. They then had an election, and they elected a government that is largely secular and largely Western in orientation, and it took office in July. And the President of the United States could not be bothered to take 10 minutes out of his day to pick up the phone and call the President of a new Libya, a country whose success in the journey along the path to democracy and freedom and a secular orientation is critical to our interests. Remember, this is one of the worst places in the Middle East. Benghazi, ironically enough, is both the center of a lot of people who want to be Western in orientation, and it's also one of the great recruiting grounds for al-Qaeda. I can remember sitting in meetings and they'd be talking about some bad guy we scooped up in some dark corner, and he'd be some Libyan from Benghazi. So the President of the United States can't be bothered can you imagine what the result would have been on the day of this guy's inaugural had he received a phone call from the President, and the President said, Mr. President, I'm sorry to intrude on this important day, but I wanted to call and congratulate you on your inauguration as the President of a new Libya. I wanted to assure you of the friendship of the American people. I wanted to assure you of my friendship. As long as your country is moving on the path to democracy and freedom, the United States of America will be your staunch friend and ally. And I appreciate the sacrifice that you and your family have made, that you, the members of your government, are making. And I want to tell you that the American people stand with you. And I'm looking forward to meeting you when you come to New York. Some people have said, I got to go do the View, but it's more important for me to meet you when you come. I mean, think about this. This guy would have been walking on water. He would have said, the President of the United States thinks enough about our country that he called me on the day that I was sworn in and assured me of the friendship of the American people. They are our friends. We need to stay close to them. And instead, he can't be bothered. But the President has a job to do, and he is failing to do it. He didn't talk to Maliki for a year. He didn't talk to Karzai for a year. He cannot be bothered to be engaged as a President of the United States in representing our interests abroad. And I was appalled by his failure to reach out to the Libyan President at a critical moment. First of all, let's put this in context. You take a look at the President's job approval on the question of the handling of foreign affairs before September 11th and compare it to today. Right. And this has been steadily downwards to the point where today the American people almost trust the challenger, Mitt Romney, to handle foreign affairs and the question of terrorism as much as they do the current incumbent in the White House. Right. That is shocking. That is a sign that the American people's good, sound judgment is, look, we're looking at this. And we're not seeing TV ads about it, and it's not the thing that's being debated each and every day on the campaign trail, but we're looking at what the President of the United States failed to do, and we're watching this unroll, and guess what? We think he's doing a crappy job.
Right. Let's